Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Heart of a Tiger by Holly Newman, narrated by Chris Macdonnell. Prologue. November 1815. Summerworth Park, Kent. "My dearest wife, what are you about?" James's voice, laced with affectionate laughter, sent the rust and black tabby kitten Cecilia had been attempting to befriend scurrying away. "Now see what you've done," she said, looking up at him standing in the stable doorway, a dark backlit image against the streaming sunlight trying to enter the stable. He looked like one of her Aunt Jessamine's silhouettes. "I have been enticing the creature to come to me for the past 15 minutes, and she was nearly at my fingertips when you scared her off." "Her?" He walked toward her, and the dark silhouette resolved into James, clothed in riding attire. Cecilia shrugged. "Or he, makes no matter." She held out her hand. James obligingly stepped forward to draw her to her feet. She brushed the dust and straw from the front of her twilight blue-figured muslin gown. "I thought I should like a cat in the house." "A cat?" "Yes. I had one as a young girl, and seeing the barn cat's kittens brought back memories." James nodded, understanding more than Cecilia would say. While her mother lived, there had been joy in her life. The kitten represented old joyous memories. He believed, hoped, that in the 6 months they'd been wed he'd brought joy back to her. "Memories of when your mother was alive?" "Yes," she said shortly. She twisted around to brush off the back of her skirts. So it wasn't just memories, he thought, though they might have served as gestation. He pulled a piece of errant straw from her pale blonde hair. "Keep working on her, or him. I don't see how they could resist you." "I know I can't," he whispered as he pulled her into the circle of his arms. "James, the servants!" she protested half-heartedly, as he lowered his head to kiss her, and she put her arms around his neck. When he broke off the kiss and lifted his head, Cecilia sighed. He tucked her arm into the crook of his as he led her back to the manor house. He walked slowly, for they were in no hurry. There was no one waiting for them, nothing they needed to be doing. He looked up at the Summerworth Park manor and beyond as far as he could see, and felt content. He'd purchased the estate last spring from his cousin, Gideon Talavest, the Earl of Monteith. They had transformed the estate over the last 6 months they had been in residence. Gone was the shabby old lady past its prime. In its place they'd resurrected a welcoming grand dame. Even now, with the leaves and flowers gone to sleep for winter, there was an elegance in the estate. He and Cecilia had much to be proud of for their efforts over the past 6 months. They had certainly been busy, but now, with winter's approach, was the quiet time, a time for reflection and planning for the new year. Quiet times did not sit well with his Cecilia, and that, he knew, was behind the interest in the cat. "You're feeling restless," he said, as they walked up the stone steps of the terrace to enter the house through the glass doors of the morning parlour, named for the morning sunlight that streamed through its long windows. He felt her shoulders slump. "Yes, I suppose I am," she admitted. "With our investigations last spring, and all the work on the estate over the summer, it has been a full year. A delightful year," she added. "The investigations we could have done without. I do not consider you almost getting killed delightful," he dryly observed. "But, James, we would not have met if it weren't for my investigations." "My love, I think I would have been drawn to you however we met." She smirked up at him. "So you say now, and so I know. We would have met one way or another, and I was drawn to you like a moth to a flame. Oh, listen to you! Outrageous! I shall not heed you, but I am restless. Life is too quiet, and that concerns me." "I trust you are not wishing for another investigation like our spring adventure." She looked sideways at him. "We did well," she said. "By the grace of God," he declared. "Nonsense. We are a good team, you must admit that. I thought you were considering setting up Mr. Thornbridge in the inquiry agent business. I was, but I am now convinced he shouldn't like that. He wants to leave the city. He is attending lectures and reading all manner of books on land and estate management. His plan now is to be an estate steward. That requires more than lectures and book learning, James said. I know, but he is determined to make a career change once Wadley's is sold. We will see what we might do to assist him. We? Naturally, she said, giving him a sly glance and smile, as if I would do anything without my wonderful husband. Why do I feel, my lady wife, that you are attempting to manipulate me? Me? Such nonsense you speak, James, Cecilia teased. He laughed, then sobered, and patted her hand where it lay across his arm. Actually, I knew of Thornbridge's plan and had put out the word on his behalf. I may have come across the perfect solution for him that will require his business acumen as well as estate stewardship. What is that? One of my cousin's entailed properties enjoys high-quality clay deposits, of the kind used for porcelain figures and tableware. He has leased it to one of the big pottery companies, but he has concerns they are taking more than agreed, and his estate steward only concerns himself with the tenant farms and the home farm, knowing nothing about the business of clay mining. When Gideon looked closer at the books for that property, he saw the potential for a nice profit that will help him pull the earldom out of the River Tick. He needs an estate agent who can negotiate with the pottery company and keep them honest. Cecilia thought. That might serve, she said slowly. Sounds like something he could really get involved in, with lots of learning potential. Such was my thought. I owe him a debt of gratitude for his efforts on your behalf. James, gratitude doesn't cover it. The man took a knife in his side while seeking information for me. I know. The sale doesn't close for another couple of weeks. Now that the terms are agreed upon, the solicitors and the banks have paperwork to draw up. We will need to go to London for the signing. As restless as you are you certain you don't wish to go sooner, or perhaps to your grandfather's until then? They're expecting us for Christmas, along with your Aunt Jessamine and her family. She wrinkled her nose. No, as much as I love grandfather, a little of the Duke of Houghton goes a long way. I shall put off that pleasure for a while longer. I know I should relax and enjoy the quiet while I can. In my soul, I am gripped by the feeling it won't last. 1. Late November 1815, East India Docks, London. "Rani! Rani!" The child's plaintive cry pierced the pandemonium of the London wharf. Rani Rangaswamy spun away from the man she'd approached for directions. She'd left Krishan not 20 feet away, sitting amongst their motley assortment of trunks, boxes, and portmanteaus. He was gone. "Krishan!" she called out, listening in every direction for his voice, searching among the teeming throngs of people and goods for a sight of her charge. To her right, tall-masted ships from India and the Far East lined the wharf, and to her left, a line of brick warehouses 3 stories tall nearly blocked out the sun. She looked frantically about the deeply shadowed wharf. She was a tiny woman by English standards, and to Rani Rangaswamy all the English people milling about the wharf appeared as giants, obscuring her view. There, a little hand waving. "Krishan!" she screamed, running toward the hand. A plump woman in a mob cap carried Krishan away. She moved fast for a large woman. Rani darted after them, weaving in and out of the crowds of ship crews, passengers, merchants, and labourers, trying desperately to keep Krishan in sight. A man in rough sailor clothes jostled her on her left side, almost knocking her over. Then came another jostle by a well-dressed gentleman from her right, and Rani stumbled and fell on the wharf. Her hand stung, scraped and bloodied against the rough wood. Her knees ached. Her green sari suffered black stains where she fell, from the tar and dirt left behind by hundreds of shoes and boots and carts that crossed and crisscrossed the dock. She scrambled to her feet, but couldn't see the woman or her charge, her dear Krishan. "Krishan!" she screamed. She looked frantically about. She ran forward a few steps. She did not know which way the woman went, where the woman might have taken him. The reality of being in a strange place among strange people who spoke a language she only partially understood threatened to crush her. Her breathing grew stuttered and rapid. Tears streaked her cheeks. 6 months on a ship, 6 months of seasickness, 6 months of loneliness, 6 months of keeping a young child entertained and safe, only to lose the child on reaching his father's country. "Krishan!" she called again, this time her voice broken, hopeless. Fear clutched at her insides. How could she have lost him? Bringing him to England was to protect him. She looked about her, turning in a slow circle. The air smelled of coal tar, wet wood, mud, and dead fish. No sunlight pierced the endless, overcast sky. Everything appeared grey, brown, and black, quite unlike her home in Bombay. Krishan's orange shirt would stand out in this sea of sameness. It was not to be seen. What was she to do? Fear and hopelessness weighed in her chest. She could hardly breathe. She could not believe this had happened, that Krishan was gone. She must find him. A scruffy, older English child stood by their luggage, looking as if he would make off with a piece. She couldn't lose their luggage as well. It was all they had. "No!" she yelled, running back to their things. The urchin who had been eyeing the alone luggage looked up. He turned to run. "No, wait, please," Rani yelled. Uncertain, the boy stopped but stood tense, ready to run, looking from her to the luggage and back. help me, please. I pay you. I have money," she said, desperate for attention and help. She prayed he understood her accented English. The child turned and ran off. Rani collapsed against their luggage. "Krishan!" she cried. Huge shuddering sobs racked her slight frame. What should I do? The horror stymied her. She couldn't think around the fact Krishan was gone. She reached out to those who passed by, seeking help, seeking a connection with another person. People glanced furtively her way and moved on. She dropped her head in her hands and wept. "Excuse me, miss, can I help you? Do you speak English?" Rani raised her head and turned to look over her left shoulder to see the man who'd spoken. His voice had been soft but infused with concern. "Yes, I speak English," she said, but slowly. The man held out his hand to her. "Here, let me help you up." She looked at his hand, uncertain, then hesitantly placed hers in his, and with one hand on their largest trunk, pushed herself up. She looked at the man carefully. He looked much like the clerks who worked for the East India Company in Bombay. He was tall, but not perhaps as tall as she had supposed while sitting on the ground. His hair was a light brown, his eyes grey like the clouds above, though they glinted with specks of green. He wore a neat brown jacket and pantaloons paired with a buff waistcoat. "Can you help me?" she asked, clasping her hands together in front of her chest, daring to hope here was someone to trust. Inwardly she wondered what choice did she have. "I can try. What is the problem? Why are you crying over your luggage?" "She took Krishan." "She?" the man asked. Yes, a woman." "Do you know her?" No, she grabbed him up," she pantomimed, picking up a child, "and she run off with him. I chased them, but I fell and lost them." "Your son?" "No, I am his ayah, his nursemaid, you understand?" Her expression twisted with anxiety. The man nodded. "I understand. Where are his parents?" "His mother, she is dead, and his father, he is dying, or he might be dead now. I don't know." Her voice rose, shrill with panic. She swallowed, nodded to herself, and in a forced, calmer tone continued, "He have me bring Krishan here to his brother. We must find Krishan. He will be so frightened." "We will," the man assured her. "First we must get you and your things off this wharf, and then notify the Thames River Police and the local magistrates." "Thames River Police? What is this Thames River Police?" Rani asked, her face screwed up in confusion at the unknown words. "They work to prevent crime along the wharves and the river. I will get someone to take care of your luggage to keep it safe. Wait here," he said. "Wait!" She grabbed his forearm. "Your name, please, sir." "Yes, where are my manners? I am David Thornbridge of Wadley Spice and Tea Company. That is our warehouse over there." He pointed to one of the large brick buildings. "And you?" "I am Rani Rangaswamy." He nodded. "I'll have your things taken to the Wadley warehouse for safekeeping while we hunt for the boy. What is his name?" "Christopher Sedgwick. His mother called him Krishan. His father, he calls him Kit." The gentleman's eyes widened at hearing the name. "We will find him, I promise you. We will find him." Rani looked at the English gentleman, and her heart felt lighter. A tiny flame of hope flickered to life. Sedgwick. That was the Earl of Soothcoor's family name. If the child was a Sedgwick, the Earl would want heaven and earth moved to find him, no matter how remote the connection. Damn, Soothcoor would do that for any child, regardless of relationship, as would his own employer, Lady Branstoke. David didn't know whether he should bless or curse the mudlark who told him about the foreigner crying. He'd had his eye on the lad for a while, wondering if he could entice him out of his thieving occupation with other work. This might be the opportunity to do so. He spotted one of his burly warehousemen pulling an empty hogshead cart and waved him over, instructing him to have the woman's small mound of baggage stored in their warehouse. "See that they take it to the 3rd floor and put it to the side. Tell the clerk up there to mark it for the Earl of Soothcoor." "Aye, sir," the man said. He immediately began loading his cart with the baggage. David turned back to the woman beside him. "Come, we'll ask after the child and put out word for his recovery," he told her, leading her down the dock. "How old is the boy?" he asked as they hurried forward. He had to change his pace for her. She likely didn't have her land legs yet if she'd just disembarked from the ship from India, and her petite stature would have her doing 2 paces to his 1. "5, she said. "He has 5 summers." "Can you give me his description?" Yes, he is thin. The sea voyage not good for him. His hair and eyes are brown." "What is he wearing?" "Orange shirt. That is how I saw him. An orange shirt and light pants like sails, and sandals. Oh, his feet will get so cold here," she lamented. David looked down at her green and gold sari and sandaled feet. "So will yours. Do you have warmer clothes?" No. Sahib, he gave me money and say I must buy clothes in England." "What did he tell you to do when you got here? Did no one know you were coming?" She shook her head. "No, there was no time," she said. "He believed he was dying. He said to go to his brother. He gave me the address and a letter for him. I sent it when the ship docked, but no one comes," she said, her brow furrowing with her sad frown. David silently swore. If there was ever a more fraught situation, he didn't know what it was. 2 weeks ago, the Times reported the Earl of Soothcoor numbered among the London residents who had left the city until the new year. Would any of his London staff be at his residence, or would they have left the city as well? Many London residents left a minimum of staff in their London townhomes when they were away. They took the rest of the staff with them or gave them holidays, depending on the time of year and how long the family intended to be away from the city. "I am afraid it is likely he is not in town," he gently told her. She looked at him stricken. "What am I to do?" My employer is a good friend of the Earl. I know she and her husband will help you. We will get a search on for the boy, and then I will take you to their home." Rani's steps slowed. She bit her lower lip. What was she to do? David looked back at her, then stopped when he noted her hesitation. "You are frightened, I know, and you don't know me. However, I vow to you I will protect you. The docks are not a safe place for you to stay." He could not imagine what thoughts and emotions must harry her like dogs nipping at her heels. It would be best if she could trust him. How do you convince someone you mean them no harm when they have just had harm done to them? How does one grant trust and accept trust under confusing circumstances? He saw when her shoulders relaxed. She nodded at him and took a deep breath, as if using the breath in and out to expel some of her fears. He hoped it did. David led her to a small wood structure built against the last warehouse on the wharf. It was a ramshackle building, an afterthought to the wharf plans, built of the odd bits of construction materials left from building the wharf and warehouses in the past 10 years. It was the local office of the Thames River Police. They stopped in the doorway, their eyes adjusting to the gloom inside. One man in blue uniform pants and jacket stood behind a rough wood counter, leaning his elbows on it as he read a newspaper spread out before him. "Excuse me," David interrupted from the entrance. The man hastily looked up and stuffed the paper behind him. "A ship came in from India today." "Yes, the Lady Abernathy," the man said, nodding. "Came in on the morning tide." Yes, that is the ship," Rani said excitedly. David nodded. This woman and her charge, a young boy of 5, were among the passengers. While she was seeking directions to her destination, an older woman snatched the boy up. "What was he wearing?" "Wearing?" "Yes, what was he wearing?" the man repeated as he pulled out paper and pencil from below the countertop. "Orange shirt." She ran a hand down her arm to indicate long sleeves. "And light-coloured pants," Rani said. "Shoes?" "No, just sandals, as I say to this man. Sahib says to me to buy clothes in the city." "Is the boy Indian?" Her head bobbled. "Some," she temporized. The man's head jerked up. "Some?" "His father is English," David explained. The man grunted and nodded in understanding. "His name?" "Christopher Sedgwick," David said. "But he is called Krishan or Kit," Rani added. He jotted down the name. "I believe the child is a relative of the Earl of Soothcoor," David gravely told him. The man looked up and let out a low whistle through the gap between his front teeth. "We need to find him," David replied. "Yes, sir. I can spread the word, give you some ideas of where to look, report it to the office in Wapping, but you should hire yourself a Bow Street runner, especially as he's related to the Earl." He came from behind the counter. "Most likely he were taken for his clothes, and to be left somewhere naked, or if the woman has a spit of decency, in rags." "For his clothes?" David asked. "Yes, sir. Those the most desperate steals the child for their clothes, strips them, then sells the togs for pennies to the pawnbrokers, leaves the hapless tots where they stripped 'em, sometimes close to a pawnbroker." Rani's brow furrowed as she tried to closely follow what the man said. She understood English better than she spoke it, especially when she was stressed. But sometimes they used words she did not know. What was this pawnbroker? She looked up at Mr. Thornbridge. "Thank you, that's most helpful," David said. He reached into his pocket. "Here's a few of my cards, if you would be so good as to pass the word on to your associates." "Certainly, sir, and good luck to you." David led Rani away from the makeshift office. "What is this pawnbroker?" she asked softly. "A shop for lending money for goods. If the goods are not retrieved in a certain amount of time, the pawnbroker sells them." "Like a bank?" she asked. David laughed. Yes, a bit like a bank, I suppose, that lends money based on assets, but on a much different scale, and they are not in the best parts of the city. What do we do now? She asked. We contact Bow Street and get the runners involved. They will be better equipped than we are to find the boy. Come. He grimly led her away from the wharf. He was glad that she did not question where they went or what they would do next. He wasn't sure himself what was the best course of action. He had come to hate the wharves, and only agreed to continue to work for Wadley Spice and Tea until Lady Branstoke sold it. There was greed and poverty and cruelty in and around the business of shipping. It revolted him. Sometimes he had nightmares of the attack he'd suffered on the wharves, paid for by supposed gentlemen of the temps, after he had discovered their vile business of selling and shipping young women overseas for sex. But he'd promised Lady Branstoke he would stay with the company, and he would, until she could complete the sale, so they could both be free of it. But what he would do afterward he did not know. He would like to leave the city, and perhaps be an estate steward or a peer's secretary. When he was younger and home from school, he used to follow the nearby Larchside estate steward around and pepper him with questions about the estate, which at the time had been in decline. But life after school took him elsewhere. Now, however, he attended every lecture he could on the latest theories on growing crops and livestock husbandry, to educate himself about his new goal. Life certainly had twists and turns. He remembered how proud he'd been to secure a position with Wadley Spice and Tea. Now he grew restless for his next position. He hurried Miss Rangaswamy as best he might to the street. A couple of blocks away from the wharf, they secured a hackney and were on their way to Bow Street. 2. The carriage halted with a jangle of reins and a small jolt, shaking Rani from her thoughts. She looked out the carriage window. They were on a street bounded on either side by brick and stone-block buildings. The street was full of carriages, people walking purposefully, and merchants calling out their wares and services. It differed from the dock sounds, louder. Some would call it noisy. Rani felt comforted by it, especially after the monotonous sounds of the sea voyage. She hadn't realized how much she had missed the sounds of the city's comings and goings. David climbed out of the carriage first, and then extended her a firm, gloved hand. Catching her balance on the cobbles, after 6 months aboard a ship it would take her a while to lose her sea legs, Rani looked wide-eyed and anxiously about at the people, horses, and coaches crowding the street. She swiftly readjusted the pallu, the loose embroidered end of her green sari, over her head, and hurried after Mr. Thornbridge, afraid she would lose sight of him as she had Krishan. This London place was cold and gloomy in fall, a world the colour of ash. The heavy stone weight she'd felt on the dock yet sat in her chest, threatening to steal her breath away. Her head ached from her tears, her cheeks papery dry. She hadn't eaten all that day, too excited to break her fast that morning as the ship sailed up the river to port. Then there had been a bit of sun breaking through the clouds, glittering on the water swells, as on the early morning high tide the ship navigated the Thames River passage to the dock. But the sun hid as the sailors scurried to secure the ship to the wharf. The pleasant breeze that had ruffled her sari as she stood on deck, lifting her face to the sun, had become an unpleasant, chilly wind. She pulled the layers of the light sari fabric tighter about her body. At least she'd ensured Krishan had food that morning. Sahib had not adequately prepared her for the voyage or their arrival in England. He had been so insistent they leave India as soon as possible so his son would not see him die. She felt ignorant, like the veriest peasant. Her confidence in herself, and the confidence Mr. Sedgwick had in her, had been real 6 months ago when Krishan and she had left India. How naive she had been, and still was. The sea journey had not agreed with either of them. They both lost weight. And though she tried to ensure they walked the deck every day for exercise, many times the weather did not favour their walks. Krishan slept fitfully, countless times crying himself to sleep while clutching his mother's singing bird.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?